Nos deux collègues ici à droite, et puis nous répondrons ensuite aux questions qui ont été posées.
Je vous remercie. Je me présente, Babacar Senghor, du ministère des Infrastructures au Sénégal. En fait, je voulais juste préciser par rapport au thème évoqué ce matin que beaucoup de mécanismes ont été mis en place par la banque et aussi par nos États dans la phase qui concerne un peu, qui est antérieure à l'exécution des projets. Vraiment, en matière de passation, aujourd'hui, je pense qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'efforts qui ont été faits. Au Sénégal, on a mis en place une direction centrale des marchés publics et une agence de régulation des marchés qui valide en tout cas tous les dossiers d'appel d'offres qui doivent être lancés. Même si par ailleurs, je pense que des fois, on gagnerait à améliorer, à rendre plus efficace en termes de délai, parce qu'il arrive qu'un dossier qui d'abord passe par notre direction centrale des marchés publics pour être validé, c'est un délai de 2 semaines à 3 semaines, qui doivent encore être envoyés auprès du bailleur de fonds. Donc, des fois, effectivement, en termes de délai, on gagnerait quand même à réduire ces temps de validation des rapports. Maintenant, je pense que c'est plutôt au niveau de l'exécution des projets où il y a quand même beaucoup d'efforts à faire. On se rend compte que les audits ne sont pas faits à temps. Et autant au niveau aussi des unités de projet, je pense qu'il y a quand même beaucoup d'efforts à faire pour améliorer en tout cas l'exécution de nos projets. Je voudrais aussi profiter un peu de la prise de parole pour dire à mon collègue de la société civile du Sénégal qu'aujourd'hui, on a un portefeuille de projets de 2000 milliards de francs CFA. Si tous ces projets-là, la BAD pouvait nous accorder un financement, on est preneur. Par rapport à la demande aujourd'hui et aux besoins, c'est de la responsabilité de nos États de diversifier les sources de financement. Et l'État du Sénégal dispose en tout cas d'un code des marchés publics qui autorise la passation de marchés, d'un certain type de marchés, tels que les partenariats publics-privés, mais qu'il faudra effectivement encadrer. Et on espère qu'avec la société civile et un peu tous les acteurs qui tournent autour de la passation des marchés, de l'exécution des projets, on pourra exécuter les projets sur lesquels aujourd'hui il y a urgence au niveau du Sénégal. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. My name is Senaruka. I'm from Togo, working for NGO Jeux de Volonté pour l'Environnement. Thank you very much, Madam. In your report between 2007 and 2008, you received about 389 allegations. You consider 58 of good consistency. You analyze 25, and then you investigate 11. This resulted in about 11 to 12 bank staff to be sanctioned. Then you created this new commissioner last year, and if I'm right, it was in late August that you sent the first 4 reports to Commissioner Akere Muna. So, Madam, my point is that not too tiny, considering the whole number of cases that you face? And what happened to those 4 reports, the first 4 you submitted to the Commissioner Muna Akere? Is there any follow-up up to now? Some of your critics said that fighting corruption requires a lot of resources. You know, at the point that we are using a lot of resources finding small stone in the banana. What's your take on that? And I have very bad souvenir in '95 when this rating agency downgraded, that was Standard & Poor's, downgraded AFDB, which made things very hard for the bank to get money. How are you dealing with this to ensure that never again the whole bank is being characterized or described as politicized, as corrupt? I mean, the whole bank. Madam, who is controlling the AFDB? Who? And lastly, in the World Bank strategy, they include a participation, disclosure, and oversight, including a third-party monitoring system. Do you have something similar again? Coming from a society working on environment, like right now, our government plan to do some projects in very fragile ecosystems, and sometimes these result in a lot of corruption issues. I have some information about the Ghana government trying to start mining in the Atiwa forest, which is a very fragile ecosystem. And now civil societies in Ghana and West Africa are gathering to discuss with the Ghana government to see if it is best to allow this business to be done or not. Do you also, in this prevention, detection, do you also get, when at the early stage of project, to see if the ecosystem, the area, the concept, if it is prone to, may lead to corruption? Are you also involved in that? Merci beaucoup, madame.
Alors nous invitons Madame Bosman-Mechayembe à répondre aux diverses questions.
Okay. I'll start from, is it Ama of Togo? Ama, yes, the scenario that I painted this morning is a scenario which I think a lot of you are familiar with. Whenever there is a big project that is going to be inaugurated or launched, you have that. The problem is that very often we do not know what's going to happen afterwards. So you start off with the belief, because probably they've gone through the whole procedure, no problems at all. And so you do not know that in actual fact, after the launching or the cutting of the sod, this is going to happen. So it's not that you know that it's going to happen and therefore you do not know. It doesn't happen that way. So that's my answer for that. You know, you really don't know until it starts. And whether, but the important thing is that once it starts, it has to be monitored effectively. This particular project that I showed you, it means that the monitoring was not there. Obviously, there was collusion because with monitoring, you have the bank staff that's got to monitor. You know, you also have the project staff, which has got to be monitoring also. And so there was something that was not happening, which should have been happening. So the monitoring effectively was not there. And like I said, happily, this doesn't happen very often, thank goodness.
Sometimes prove injurious to a particular person, you know, who perhaps may feel that he has not been fairly, you know, investigated. No, is there any other redress mechanism after the decision?
The point is, yes, he can go to the bank, he can go to the courts if he wants to, but the decision that has been taken by the Sanctions Commissioner, he can take it up first of all to the Sanctions Appeals Board. So he has one level to go to from the Sanctions Commissioner. He can go to the Sanctions Appeals Board and say, I do not agree with what the Sanctions Appeal Board has, Sanctions Commission has said. But once the Sanctions Appeal Board upholds the decision of the Sanctions Commissioner, that decision is final. So the decision, for example, to sanction you, the decision to stop doing business with you is final. Now, if you feel that there's something else that you know, you're not happy with, you can of course go to the courts. But you have to also remember that the courts, what is the court going to be looking at? What is the court going to be looking at? You are talking about what, your reputation or something like that? But if it's been found, because the evidence, I mean, this is an administrative tribunal, or it goes on the evidence before it. So this same evidence, if you want to take it, let's say to the court outside, this is the same evidence, unless you can show something else. And if you can show something else, then why didn't you bring it to the Sanctions Appeals Board? Okay, so that's one thing. And then you also asked about whistleblower protection. Obviously, we have a whistleblowing policy, which whistleblowing policy you'll find on the website, and which whistleblowing policy is almost the same as all the other whistleblowers policies in the other MDBs. Our whistleblower policy takes into consideration, even more than the other MDBs, the fact of an external whistleblower. Now, obviously, the protection for whistleblowers when they are bank staff is much stronger because the bank has got jurisdiction over its personnel and therefore can give certain guarantees. It's much stronger guarantees than it can give to external whistleblowers. Now, and as much as the bank can, it will protect the external whistleblower. But the bank also relies on the national authorities to facilitate the protection of whistleblowers. Now, it becomes easier in jurisdictions or in countries where there's a whistleblower policy, where there's a when the country has got a whistleblower policy, because in that regard, the bank or the investigative office can collaborate or cooperate with the national institution or with the national entity which is the advocate for the protection of the whistleblower. You know, it makes it much easier. But you can, I mean, you can imagine that there's only so much that the bank can do. And in our whistleblowing policy, we say as much, that as far as possible, we will protect the external whistleblower as far as is possible. So we do what we can. There has been 1 or 2 cases, I believe, where the bank, through the investigation department, what they did was to draw the national authorities' attention to the fact that somebody who was a whistleblower and who had been shown to be the whistleblower was being retaliated against. I mean, he was facing some very difficult situations because of what he had disclosed to the bank. So the bank got into discussions with, I believe, the ministry involved or so, and luckily, in this particular case, the gentleman was taken from the community where he was and put on another project somewhere else. But those situations are few and far between. It is now what the bank, and that's what we're trying to do now in saying that we are giving training and strengthening the oversight institutions and the national authorities, is because we want to give them training or support in legislation. If a country has got very good legislation, protective legislation, then it's much easier for us to also operate. I'll take also the question about our sanctions. How do you follow it up? One of the things, if an entity has been sanctioned, and that entity is trying to get some more business, let's say he's been sanctioned by the World Bank, and if for some reason the African Development Bank doesn't know that he's been sanctioned, and he's coming under new guise, and not a lot of companies do that. They come under new guise. One of the things in your loan documents, in the bidding documents, you have to declare. There's a portion there which says that you have to declare, have you been debarred or not? You know, if you say, no, you have me debarred, or you make a false declaration, that is another sanctionable practice, you know. So you can catch them in that regard. The other thing is that the due diligence by the national authority, because, you know, we don't usually choose somebody even talked about it, I believe. We don't usually choose the contractors that are going to be working, but we do have a say. We do have a say because all these things come back to us, and then you have to give your no objection, etc. So there are some checks and balances, but of course, again, they are not perfect. But one way or the other, you can catch them somewhere, you know. So that's what I can tell you about that in this regard. I think. Southland, you said yesterday, the lady who spoke said that there was some pressure sometimes because of you know, people have got to give, you know, they have to do projects, etc. It is true that there is a tension between the projects, the reports that you have to give. Sometimes you have some indications of some things that you have to show that you have done. So there may be some tension between it. But as far as the investigation or the integrity and anti-corruption department is concerned, if you are doing a project and there's problems with the project and it comes to our attention and we are investigating, we investigated whether or not you have to reach a certain threshold or whatever. We will do it, and in actual fact we have had a lot of, not pressure, but a lot of unhappiness which has been expressed by the operations department, because sometimes their projects are delayed because we're investigating. But once we have got these allegations of some misdoings in the project, we will investigate. So whether or not you have to, we will not have the pressure. We will not give in to the pressure. Let me put it this way. We have been given a task, and therefore we go forward and we do that task. Okay. I think the security of the whistleblower, I've answered that. Yes, but I think that you can also go onto our website and look at our whistleblower policy. We don't have time here to talk too much about it, but in actual fact, you'll have a good inkling as to how the whistleblower is protected, and it's much more geared towards bank staff than non-bank staff. Mr. Yes.
Yeah, before I come to the specific questions, I think I just wanted to add on this issue of sanctions and how do we ensure as a bank that the culprits do not continue doing business with the bank. I think at the point of the contract award, we normally require the executing agency to do a due diligence on the particular recommended bidder. And this, we normally give them the access to those links which would say whether the pumps have been debarred or not. And on our part, as a bank also, we ensure that the bidder who is being awarded the contract has not been in the past debarred. So we ensure that at least at the end of the day, the directors of those companies, because they may come in different names, but you can always catch them by knowing who are the directors behind these companies. So that's the due diligence we undertake.
Can I just add something? I forgot to ask that we have what we call an integrity risk tool. For the task managers, in fact, anybody in the bank actually has got access to a tool that we have also on our website. And that tool, if you're not sure about a certain company, all you need to do is to key in the name of the company and this, just to request some more information. This information comes directly to my office, to the department, where the people, the investigators in the department, do a check, a forensic check on whatever you have sent, the names, to see whether or not they're on any blacklist anywhere. If they do appear on a blacklist, but they are not, or what we call a gray list, they have not been debarred, but there's been some problem about them, and we haven't debarred, for example, you are told then to increase your due diligence, to enhance your due diligence. And if you're not sure, come back to us. So that's also an added tool that we have.
Yeah. So on the specific questions which had been raised, I think there are a couple of them. I'll attempt to answer some. The first one was how far as a bank have we gone towards the harmonization with the World Bank, and the specific questions, what do we think about the UNICITRAL law? And also connected with that question is, what is the bank doing about the national procurement procedures? Let me put it this way. We are part of the multilateral development institutions. And since 2004, the attempt has been to harmonize to the extent possible. Wherever we're operating in a particular country, we should use one rule or one set of documents to lessen the transaction cost to the borrowers. That being the case, we harmonized, and as I indicated in the presentation, we use the World Bank documents as our benchmark. Now, beyond that, the differences which are still existing between our rules and the World Bank rules are basically of institutional nature. They are the World Bank with the African Development Bank. our charters are different. So definitely we cannot have it 100%. Otherwise, in terms of the processes, it's almost similar and identical. Now, what is the bank doing about the reform, or rather the national procurement procedures? This is to let you know that since 2009, the bank undertook to assess the procurement, the national procurement procedures. And to date, we have got 45 reports which have been almost validated by the bank concerning the national procurement procedures. What did we do in this? We were actually using a particular tool which has been developed by the OECD DAC, which is a tool used for assessing the country procurement system. Now, out of these reports, we have identified 3 different categories of the procurement procedures. There's category A, which is those countries having the procurement, the national procurement procedures, robust enough to be used under the bank finance projects without any hesitation. Category B are those countries which have a modern procurement system, yet they have little deficiency here and there, which needs to be tweaked so that they can be allowed to be used under the bank finance projects. Lastly, we have the category C, which apparently these are countries which are either coming out of the post-conflict or fragile states, which their systems are still at infancy and needs to be modernized further. What is it that we are going to do? We have formulated an action plan, and we are currently dialoguing with a number of countries on how we are going to improve their procurement systems. So in terms of modernizing the procurement systems in various countries, the bank is actually doing something about it. So we are not left out. We are actually assisting countries to modernize their procurement systems. You did raise also another question that the bank supports the PIUs, or the PIUs are implementing projects on behalf of the bank. Let me reassure you that the PIUs, or the project implementation units, are not employed by the bank. They are engaged by the country themselves, the executing agency or the borrower, which means they are working on behalf, implementing the projects on behalf of the executing agency or the borrower. It's not the bank who is engaging them. So we have no role in that engagement. What we do, because we want to ensure we are in partnership with the government, we want to ensure that the projects are implemented on a timely basis, we ensure that we provide the no objection at each and every stage of that procurement process. Otherwise, we are not engaging them, they are engaged by the government. There was a question on the notion or the issue of efficiency, which we talk about, and apparently in the national procurement system, it does not appear to be there. I think as part of the validation of the national procurement systems, we always also check whether the way the national regulations have been drafted has the components or elements of economy, efficiency, fairness, transparency, accountability. All these parameters are checked. So when we pronounce as a bank that this particular country, his regulations or procedures are in category A, we are satisfied that these elements have been taken into account. For those countries which don't have them, we also recommend that further reforms need to be undertaken so that all these issues, the basic tenet of a good procurement system has to be ingrained into that particular system. So we do the recommendations. And as part of the dialogue we are now carrying with countries where their procurement system are still either at infancy or in the second category. Value for money, again, we said, if you allow for computation, probably then you'll get value for money. You don't allow for computation, probably you will not get value for money. So under the bank projects, we advocate, as a default, is open computation. In very rare cases, the bank will allow us to do a direct contracting, because we know that through direct contracting, there's no value for money for that. So it's the least preferred method which the bank will agree to only under specific circumstances. Poor quality documents, you talked about why you get equipment delivered after some time, again you have to get, because of the quality. I think this now, as you have been asked, what's your role? If you're working for a government institution or you are working for you are the private sector, who is going to ensure that a quality product is delivered? I think it's both from the public and the private sector. The private sector who's supplying the equipment has to ensure that the equipment meets the minimum standards which have been stipulated in the bidding document. From the public sector, you have to ensure that whatever you are receiving actually meets what you wanted. So the minimum standards, minimum requirements in your bidding document has to be stipulated. Something which is below the minimum standards should not be accepted. So I think that now it's your role as the public sector who is actually requesting this. So you can't accept something which has got a minimum standard than what you stipulated in your bidding document. Then lastly, I think it was the issue of whether the slide I showed here, which shows the relationship between the various parties in a normal project. What I indicated is that the bank has got a relationship with the borrower, and that relationship is through the loan or grant agreement. So all the rights and obligations is in that document. Between the contractor, supplier, and the consultant, the relationship is between them and the borrower. And that relationship is also stipulated in the contract which they sign. Now, the bank has got nothing to do with the three. However, the bank will pay on the request of the borrower that contractor A has performed this amount of work. Can you pay him, let's say, $100? The bank will only pay when the request comes from the borrower, not from the contractor. That's why we say the relationship between the bank and these entities is not there. There's no direct relationship. Though the bank pays, but the bank has no any contractual relationship with the contractor, supplier, and the consultant. Thank you.
Très bien. Je voulais juste répondre à notre ami du réseau africain ivoirien par rapport au financement justement des projets. Il existe effectivement une pression, mais une pression sur le temps, pas nécessairement une pression sur les montants engagés dans les projets. Pourquoi? Parce que lors de chaque reconstitution du FAD, pour une période de 3 ans, il y a un certain montant qui est alloué à tous les pays FAD, à tous les pays africains qui sont éligibles pour la fenêtre de financement FAD. Et pour chaque pays, il y a un financement, il y a une allocation qui dépend bien sûr de la population, de la performance passée, des besoins, etc. Et lorsque ce montant est alloué au pays, il y a un dialogue, une concertation avec ce pays-là pour voir quel programme afin de vous permettre de vous exprimer. Donc nous allons continuer avec cette séance de questions-réponses. Et par la suite, si le temps le permet, nous ferons une brève présentation sur les indicateurs de fraude et donner également l'occasion à la société civile, à travers donc ce matin M. Idrissa Mahaman, de nous parler du programme où il intervient jusqu'à donc 13h ou 13h30 pour le déjeuner. Donc voilà, nous continuerons donc notre séance de questions-réponses qui te mène donc à passer outre certaines présentations. Donc, le monsieur qui m'accusait tout à l'heure de ne pas voir sa main, donc je vous donne la parole en premier. Votre voisin également.
Je peux dire une chose aussi, hein, pour permettre aux gens de poser des questions. Hein, il faudra être un peu bref. Tout à fait. Il ne faut pas un long discours, mais essayez, si c'est une contribution, que ça soit bref. Et si c'est une question, oui. Oui, ils peuvent, mais la question doit être directe. Hein. Comme ça, on pourra peut-être avoir un peu plus de temps et tout le monde aura l'occasion de poser des questions. Merci beaucoup.
Voilà, comme le dit Mme Bosman, pour permettre également aux autres collègues de poser des questions, soyez bref et donc concis. Donc je dis monsieur, votre voisin, puis madame. Now we'll take a first round of 5 questions, then we come back again, okay? Ça va venir, ne vous inquiétez pas. Alors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, et je reviens encore. On vous donnera également la parole. Donc, on commence avec monsieur.
Thank you very much. I have 2 sets of questions, but I will be very, very brief. My name is Shirley Davis.
From?
Sierra Leone Anti-Corruption Commission.
Yes.
Yes, one set is for Madam Anna Bosman. You spoke about materiality as a trigger for your investigations. Where does this tie up with your zero tolerance policy on corruption. And secondly, you said the investigations are administrative and not a criminal investigative process. You said the investigations that you undertake are administrative and are not criminal investigative processes. What happens when an accused person who feels that his reputation has been injured as a result of the decision of the Sanctions Commissioner? What happens then? Is there another redress mechanism? And thirdly, you spoke about whistleblowing, and I see you've explained extensively how you undertake this kind of process, but you did not say anything about the whistleblower protection, the aspect of whistleblower protection. I would like to know how you do it at the bank. And this is an appeal. I understand you've had 2 MOUs now with anti-corruption agencies. We would like to have an MOU with you at the Anti-Corruption Commission in Sierra Leone. This set of questions is for the gentleman that did the presentation on procurement. You spoke on the harmonization of bank rules with multinational organizations like the World Bank and others. How is this in sync with the UNCITRAL law? And also, how or what has the bank done to harmonize its rules with national, procurement rules? And secondly, you mentioned something about procurement relationship, and you said there is no kind of relationship between the bank and the borrower in terms of procurement with respect to the offering of contract. But in some respect, we have had instances where the bank would say that certain requirements would be procured by the bank PIUs. So where do we draw the line? The bank, there's a project implementation units in each of the country offices, and these PIUs undertake procurement sometimes. So where do we draw the lines in terms of your responsibility as oversight institution and, at the same time undertaking procurement? Thank you.
Très bien. Je pense qu'il y avait suffisamment vraiment de questions ici pour qu'on peut continuer. D'accord. Ok, monsieur. Si vous pouvez vous présenter dans un premier temps et puis nous faire part de vos commentaires et vos questions.
Je suis Arbafal Ahmed Khali de la société civile, mais je suis également directeur des statistiques et de la documentation à l'autorité de régulation des marchés publics pour jusqu'en décembre parce que je prends ma retraite en ce moment. Donc, si je voudrais poser quelques questions par rapport à la notion d'efficacité d'abord. Je voudrais savoir comment elle est traduite dans les textes de la BAD. Est-ce que c'est dans les appels d'offres, dans la sélection ou le contrôle a priori par les non-objections qui vous sont demandées? Parce que ça fait défaut dans nos textes. Ce problème fait défaut dans les textes des pays qui ont adopté le nouveau système des marchés publics avec la séparation du contrôle, de la régulation et de la passation. Parce qu'à ce propos, j'ai été sidéré d'apprendre hier en visitant l'Open Data que 50% de nos importations venaient de Chine. Je n'ai rien contre les Chinois, mais contre ce que nos entrepreneurs, nos commerçants achètent chez eux. Parce qu'ils vendent du bon produit. Mais c'est nos commerçants qui vont acheter. Et ça fait des cimetières de meubles dans nos administrations. Je connais un marché de la BAD, très récent, pour lequel déjà, qui ne date pas de 2 ans, mais au moins un 5e des bureaux, fauteuils et autres sont déjà au cimetière. Dans toutes les administrations, en Mauritanie en tout cas, vous verrez des cimetières de fauteuils. Le même matériel, on l'achète 3-4 fois. Alors que si on avait acheté de la bonne qualité, ça aurait pu durer 20 ans. En 2-3 ans, on met le même prix que pour un produit de qualité qui peut durer 20 ans. En fait, c'est parce que cette notion d'efficacité n'est pas dans nos textes. À part le Burkina, je ne connais pas de pays qui, par exemple, demande des spécimens, des spécimens des fournitures. Il n'y a que le Burkina, pour le moment, en tout cas à ma connaissance, qui demande ça. Tout est tourné vers les entreprises. Liberté d'accès à la commande, égalité du traitement des candidats, transparence des procédures. Rien qu'à travers ce slogan, on sait qu'on ne parle pas d'efficacité. Donc c'est au détriment de l'État et donc de la collectivité en général. Par rapport aux sanctions, quand une entreprise est sanctionnée, s'il n'y a pas de suite juridictionnelle, on n'est jamais sûr si le même propriétaire de l'entreprise n'a pas d'autres entreprises. On ne sait pas aussi s'il est actionnaire principal dans d'autres entreprises. Donc l'efficacité de l'exclusion n'est pas évidente dans nos pays où chacun a plusieurs structures à travers lesquelles il peut être candidat au marché public. En ce qui concerne, pour la société civile, si vous m'assurez que je pourrai revenir une prochaine fois, je peux faire l'économie de ça, parce qu'on en parle après. Sinon, je pose tout de suite... bon, voilà, je voudrais dire... On laisse pour... Par rapport aux marchés qui ne sont pas terminés, en général, la faute est aux faux documents qui sont produits. Quand nous avons eu un exemple d'un stade qui devait être construit, une entreprise qui n'existait que depuis moins de 2 ans a donné des attestations comme quoi il a construit un stade en Guinée, un stade ailleurs, etc. Ce n'est pas possible en 2 ans. Après enquête, cela s'est avéré que c'était faux. Enfin, par rapport maintenant au défaut de certaines pièces, tel qu'en a parlé notre collègue ivoirien, un bordereau de livraison. Dans nos pays, c'est facile à avoir. Peut-être un PV de réception, mais un bordereau de livraison, si ça fait défaut, c'est parce qu'il y a des problèmes d'archivage. Et je crois que la BAD doit former, au départ des projets, insister sur la notion d'archivage, parce que ça fait défaut quelquefois. Je ne crois pas qu'on puisse ne pas avoir un bordereau de livraison. Il y a des risques que les fournitures n'aient pas été livrées, mais bordereau de livraison, c'est sûr qu'on peut l'avoir. Voilà, je vous remercie.
Merci pour vos questions. Donc, je passe à madame ici.
Merci pour ces différentes présentations qui nous ont vraiment édifiés. Moi, c'est madame Meiga Aïcha Soumana Meiga de la République du Mali. J'ai juste une petite question, c'est de savoir du commencement des activités du département de la lutte anticorruption à nos jours. Est-ce que votre département a eu à traiter des cas de fraude dans des projets dans des pays? Quels en sont les résultats que vous avez eu à acquérir dans ce sens? Je vous remercie.
Merci.
Merci. Merci, je remercie les 2 présentateurs. Moi, ma question... Oui, c'est vrai. Je m'appelle Saon Flan. Je suis du réseau pour l'environnement et le développement durable en Afrique, dont le secrétariat est en Côte d'Ivoire, hébergé par la Banque africaine de développement. Moi, ma question, en fait, se situe... D'abord, hier, en écoutant les présentations d'hier, il y a une présentation où Madame avait exposé plus sur les pressions. La pression qui existe sur les managers, la pression pour amener des projets. La pression pour amener des projets. Et ensuite, donc, parce qu'ils seront jugés sur ces projets-là, quel nombre de projets as-tu emmené à financement? Et je vois aussi qu'il y a la pression aussi sur nos gouvernements, la pression aussi de respecter soit leur programme. Et donc, ils viennent voir aussi la BAD pour le financement. Et quand on regarde tout ça, on dit ce qu'on doit voir, c'est la population derrière tout ça, le bien-être de la population. Donc moi, mon inquiétude, c'est que est-ce que toutes ces pressions exercées à différents niveaux ne peuvent pas ne peut pas être source de corruption quelque part. Parce qu'on veut aider la population, le gouvernement veut accomplir son programme. Mais aussi, les managers aussi veulent emmener à faire financer le maximum de projets parce qu'ils seront jugés sur leur performance serait un peu liée à ça. Et donc, est-ce que cela peut pas être source de corruption? Et donc, est-ce que votre département, madame, ne peut pas... est-ce que par moment, votre département joue un rôle d'avant-gardiste dans ce sens-là? Donc, c'est ça ma première question. Ensuite, ma seconde question est adressée à M. Moses. Dans le schéma qu'il a montré, on a vu quelque part qu'il y a la banque, ensuite, il y a les consultants, d'autre part, les consultants et les soumissionnaires, et puis un autre, l'emprunteur qui est l'État. Dans ce schéma, on a vu qu'il y avait un lien direct entre la banque et donc l'État emprunteur, et ensuite un lien direct entre l'emprunteur et les consultants. Mais il n'y avait pas de lien entre les consultants et la banque. Donc ma question donc sera, si il s'avère qu'il y a un cas de fraude au niveau donc des soumissionnaires ou au niveau donc du consultant, qui est redevable envers la banque? Et est-ce que votre investigation peut aller jusqu'à ce niveau-là, puisqu'il n'y avait pas de lien? Voilà un peu ma question. Merci beaucoup.
Juste une petite clarification. Lorsque vous parlez des managers qui font pression, vous parlez de quel manager? Les task managers, les chefs de division au niveau de la banque, de qui vous parlez au juste?
Les managers qui sont chargés de... y a les équipes projets, mais les managers au sein de la BAD qui ont pour tâche aussi de faire exécuter un certain nombre de projets. Parce que la dame hier dans son exposé disait que eux, ils seront aussi jugés par le nombre de projets qui ont pu être amenés à être financés par la BAD.
Ok, très bien, merci.
Donc c'est ça. Merci.
Thank you. I'm called Maurice Udhiambo. I'm from Kenya. The first question I wanted to ask was about security of whistleblowers, which has already been asked. But apart from that, I wanted to ask between the World Bank policy, whistleblowing policy, and the national policies on whistleblowing, which one takes precedent? Because on safeguards, if a company falls safeguards, then the safeguards from the bank takes precedent. Thank you.
I'll start answering so that, and then we'll do the second round of questions, and then I'll ask Mr. Moses also to give some responses. Now, Davis, you wanted to know what we meant by materiality, because you want us to tie it up with zero tolerance and whatnot. When we say that, when we're looking at the complaints, we see whether it is, first of all, verifiable. When we say it's verifiable, what we mean is that there are some sources for obtaining the records. We can actually obtain the records. We can reach witnesses. And then there's some way that we can get the information necessary to continue with the investigation. And then when we talk about whether it is credible, credibility, we talk about, what we mean is that now, on the face of it, that particular complaint or allegation that has been made shows that there's a certain reasonableness to show that an alleged wrong has occurred, that in fact something has occurred. It's reasonable to suppose that something has occurred. And that wrong or that offense involves bank personnel or bank activities, or one way or other, it also involves the violation of bank rules. So, and then when we come down to materiality, what we mean is that there's potential or possible fraud, operational or reputational risk to the bank, which justifies that we do that particular investigation. So we look at all that, The challenge is always with the verifiability. It's always a challenge because people might have actually got you have a reasonable justification for making allegations. But when it comes down to probably coming down to the country office, for example, the RMC, to come now and verify whether this is substantiated or not, there's a problem with getting records. You know that in our part of the world, record keeping is not our forte. Sometimes there's a problem with getting records. Sometimes there's a problem of collusion with some national authorities. Very often, people who actually have the information are terrified to give that information, you know, and they will not give you the information, or they'll give you the whole runaround because they're afraid. There's all this. So you see that it can become very difficult to do investigations, and a lot of times the actual act may not be in a place where it is you can easily get all this kind of information for. I mean, if you have to go to some place which you have been to before, some remote area where everybody knows everybody else, and you are counting on some witness to give you information, you can be sure that it's going to be kind of difficult for them to give you that information. But when we talk about materiality, these are some of the things that we talk about: potential financial or reputational risk to the bank.
Mesdames et messieurs, je vous souhaite encore une fois la bienvenue à cette journée consacrée à l'intégrité, à la lutte contre la corruption et bien sûr à la contribution des organisations de la société civile dans ce combat. Donc, nous allons organiser l'après-midi de la façon suivante. Nous aurons Madame Florence Denis de la Commission ghanéenne de lutte contre la corruption présenter bien sûr sur le fonctionnement de cette commission ainsi que les diverses activités qui y sont conduites. Par la suite, nous aurons M. Augustin Toé de la Commission de lutte contre la corruption du Libéria, qui va également nous faire part de son expérience dans la lutte contre la corruption. Et par la suite, nous prendrons donc les questions et les commentaires des différents partenaires ici. Donc, sans plus tarder, je donne la parole à Madame Florence Denis pour sa présentation.
Let me say thank you to the African Development Bank for allowing us to do this or share this information with you. I would first like to explain that the name is Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. It is different from a commission. We are not a state institution, but it's a peculiar network of civil society organizations, the public sector institutions who are fighting corruption, religious bodies, media, and think tanks who have come together to form the network. So I'll be touching on, I'll be giving just a brief now that we allow more time for question, a brief about the organization, mission and vision, which I'll later on give you a website that you can find more information on. And I'll dwell more on the projects and activities that we do on anti-corruption and somehow link into how the bank can take inference from them in terms of civil society, what we'll be expecting, and some of the challenges in the fight against corruption. Let me say that this coalition was formed because in the late 1990s, it was very difficult for any institution in the country to really even talk about corruption. So that is why the coalition, being peculiar, both public institutions, the private sector, the religious bodies, civil society organizations decided to come together to form this network so that collectively they can develop collective action in fighting corruption. So it started in the 1998 and it was formally launched in 2000. And since then, we've been working together in a collaborative way. I said I wouldn't dwell much. So our membership are the Commission on Human Rights and Economic and Organized Crime Office, which are public institutions. The National Governance Secretary was a member but is no longer. We have the Private Enterprise Foundation, the Ghana Journalists Association, and then we have civil society organizations like the Ghana Integrity Initiative, which is the local chapter for Transparency International, CDD Ghana, the Institute of Economic Affairs, and the Ghana Conference of Religions for Peace, which comprises the Christian, Muslim, and all the religious groups coming together to form a group. The coalition is managed by a secretariat, and we do a lot of the work. Our main work is on research, evidence-based advocacy, training and capacity building, and then public awareness, public education, and awareness creation. And let me say that in my presentation, I'm not saying that we are doing everything. We are just focusing on the areas where we have strength, because we are building a multi-stakeholder group to look at the issue of corruption. So our main strategy in terms of our implementation is to engage constructively, because we want to make an input, we want to make a change. We also collaborate with diverse institutions. Our main idea is to build partnerships. We need everybody on board this work. We also believe in inclusiveness, physically challenged, and everybody is key in this work. And it is only when these three things are brought together that we'll be able to sustain the fight. So we are very particular about the strategy that we adopt. And this strategy is key because if you engage in abrasive engagement, you will not get the public officials or the public institutions or the politicians who have been elected and have the people's mandate, even to listen to you. We want to make a change beyond what we do. When we do research, we want to ensure that whatever we pick, we understand the other side, but we ensure that we are able to create a platform for engagement so that they pick our ideas and then bring the change. Some of the main work that we've been doing is on whistleblowing. And Ghana passed the law in 2006. Unfortunately, it looks as if even when you ask a lot of people, they might not be aware of the law. And one of the issues we have in fighting corruption is that we have a lot of the laws, but implementation is weak. And if we do not implement, if we do not build institutions that have to implement these laws, we cannot put them to test to see how they fared and even look at how we can improve upon them. So the Whistleblower Act was passed in 2006, and we realized that there was a challenge even in the implementation initially because there was no coordinating agency. So 1 year after it was passed, we first engaged the public institutions that were mandated in the law to implement. And we realized that there was even lack of information amongst them. So you could see that with this, there is a challenge because even if those who have to receive it are not aware or they haven't put in processes to receive it, how much more the public out there who are supposed to also blow the whistle. So we developed a simplified guide, and I've brought copies for you to explain what is whistleblowing, to guide individuals and media to blow the whistle. We also developed an animation, which we also went into discussion with the Ministry of Information and gave them CDs of the animation to use it all over the country to educate the public, build capacity of CSOs. We also then used that opportunity since 2007 to collate information on what citizens and even the public institutions who are supposed to receive the whistleblower have in implementing the law. One of the key institutions was traditional rulers, our chiefs, pastors. And we realized that they were not even aware that they had a role to play in the act. So we have used this information since then to advocate for a review of the law. And as of today, we have a new bill that will look at enhancing the implementation of the law when it is passed. We have also been working closely with the media on their role in terms of their oversight role in the fight against corruption. And what we did was to pick media stories since 2009 and conduct content analysis of the story to find out, do they follow up on the story? Is it investigative pieces? And then we use this to build the capacity of journalists and work with Anas. I'm sure if you've been watching Aji series, you've heard of Anas Arimiyao, and work with him to then build a capacity of journalists. Out of that, we formed a young 14 group journalists called the Journalists Against Corruption Network, where we are building their capacity in terms of investigative journalism. We're also working on a health accountability project, and this is using the SMS website and focal persons to collate citizens' experiences in accessing health care. It is all towards achieving the Millennium Development Goals. And when we collect this information, we engage the health institutions, and we are also educating citizens on their patients. There's a citizen charter on health about the rights and responsibilities of a patient, which the ministry has developed, but they are not even aware. If you can only hold people accountable when they are aware about what they have to do. So that's what we are doing, and then we'll conduct a patient's perception index and engage policymakers to improve on the quality of health care in the health sector in Ghana. One of the key areas, and I heard it mentioned, is also looking at the Public Accounts Committee, which we believe that their work has enormous impact on improving our public financial management processes and systems. And in Ghana, we've had the Public Accounts Committee sitting every year, coming out with people being queried that they have done wrong and they need to go and improve. However, we did not see a lot of these recommendations being implemented after a research that we did. So we did the research and then engaged Parliament on that. If you continue to do public sittings and your recommendations are not implemented, the public might even lose trust, because we go and come back and repeat the same errors and procurement malfeasance and all that happens in terms of the public financial management systems. One of the things we realized was that even the collation of information and keeping the information at Parliament is one of the key areas that needs to be looked at. And I think if the African Development Bank is looking at working with the Public Accounts Committee, is an area that they will need to look at. Also, they need to look at how Parliament as an institution, and in terms of their committee work, they will effectively then be able to build a database that will be able to collate some of this information, and also build the capacity of the parliamentary staff that provide support to the Public Accounts Committee, because parliamentarians come and go every 4 years. You might want to invest in their capacity, but the way you invest, you need to balance it with building the institution itself, which is more sustainable. And one of the weaknesses of Parliament and even members of the Public Accounts Committee is that it isn't all of them that are auditors. That you give them audited accounts and they have to sit down and review and analyze. It is a real challenge, so the technical capacity needs to be looked at. They rely on consultants most of the time. Can it be sustainable? It needs to be looked at. We also work with the private sector. We work with the private sector because we know they are the other end of the corruption deal. And as you know, a lot of the corruption issues that has happened in our part of the world involves multinationals and big companies who we know have signed on to global anti-corruption initiatives. Some of them have signed on to the UNCTAD Convention. Some of them are in countries where they have strong anti-corruption laws. But what happens when they come here? Are they implementing those things? So we did a research first, and then after that research, we realized that most of them have compliance processes, have anti-corruption policies, but how they are implementing them, I think they don't even share. And each private company seems to be in its own shell, struggling with how he deals with this problem. We formed a Business Integrity Forum in 2010, and since then, they have shared information about how they are using their anti-corruption policies and how they are implementing it within the institution. And it was interesting to know that a business entity like Guinness Ghana Limited has so stringent policies that even Vodafone could not meet. Vodafone Ghana. I remember in one of the meetings, one of their policies that if they are having a meeting with stakeholders, you have to send them a list of the stakeholders, and they have to verify and confirm the list, indicate who are government officials and who are private sector before you can be part of the meeting. And we're at the meeting, and then Vodafone said they were bringing in one staff, and they brought 3 staff. And Guinness said that the other 2 cannot participate because they haven't been cleared. So, I mean, these are some of the stringent processes, but the interesting thing is that the public is not even aware, and public institutions are also not aware. What we did was to give this information on the anti-corruption policies to the Commission on Human Rights, the anti-corruption department, to use it to educate the public servant as part of their education work. And one of the things that came out, for example, was with Barclays Bank Ghana, where I think we talked to the banks and we realized that Ghanaians are good at saying thank you. Even if the teller does not want the money, you throw it at them. But it is against the bank rule. And we're telling them that how does the public know that they should not give a tip at the bank? You should do a small poster in the bank that says that do not say thank you with money. And I think they took on that idea at the meeting, and since then some of them have these stickers in the banks. So they need to be part of the education campaign because they also have processes there. We hope that in future we'll be able then to come together properly to sign an integrity pact with public institutions working with them so that it reduces corruption in the public sector. We are also involved in national issues, and GACC has made itself that I strongly believe that there hasn't been any national issue on anti-corruption that we are not involved. And it makes us always to be around the table and make an input and our voices heard loudly. We have developed, Ghana has developed a 10-year national anti-corruption plan that we are hoping that Parliament will give an assent to it. We are also involved in the review process of the UNCAN Convention, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which is happening now, and Ghana is being reviewed by external evaluators from today to Friday from Rwanda and Swaziland. And we've been part of the process. For us, it helps us to learn how these public institutions work. Some of the issues that come of these self-assessment and review processes, at least you are on top of it within, and then you know how to also advise on the way forward. Other project that we've been working on that I thought was key, and I think Wakama is about contract monitoring in West Africa. And we are working in Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and then Nigeria. And it's about procurement monitoring. We form multi-stakeholder groups in these 4 countries, and they are supposed to select part of the procurement cycle that they want to monitor, and then monitor some contracts that are being done. Interestingly, this project is being funded by the World Bank. So most of the participants, when they were given the option to select projects, decided to select World Bank projects. Ghana is doing roads and school building. Nigeria is doing power sectionalizers. Liberia is doing waste management monitoring. And then Sierra Leone is roads and school building. The interesting thing is that in Nigeria, when they were ready to monitor and they wanted contract documents to monitor, although it was World Bank projects sponsored, they could not get the documents. They went to the bank, they couldn't get it. They went to the public institutions that have it. They were not given, so they had to go to court. It's because they have the access to information. So the coalition went to court, and they were granted a judgment to be provided with all the information to be able to monitor. I mean, these are some of the things that I think maybe the bank might need to put its access to information to test, to find out whether it has enough information to allow people to monitor. And when in Ghana, they adopted a different strategy. They were able to get the contract documents to monitor. And then after that, they engaged the Ministry of Roads and Highways about what they have found out and what needs to be done to improve upon it. Whilst working on this project, we've realized that the best way of dealing in this is to adopt the multi-stakeholder approach, where you engage your key stakeholders, because after the monitoring, you need to share the information with them, and then you need to find solutions to them. We don't know how the Nigeria work will finally end because they went to court. Because, you know, when you go to court and you get the judgment, after that, would the people be prepared to listen to you? But we hope they would. But what I'm saying is that in Nigeria, their procurement law is even such that they have civil society participation in the tendering process, so they are able to get more information. But even with that, when it came to the bank documents, they had to go to court. So some of the lessons we've learned over the years is that, I've said some of them, the right information is always challenging, especially when you want to do some content work. And I think in Ghana, we don't have the access to information, but we have different ways. You can get it through the collaborative approach. If you don't get it, then you might need to resort to other ways. We've always said that the multi-stakeholder approach is always the best, although there are always challenges also in implementing that. And I think I've said that development partners need to enhance their access to information policy so that people could access the information, because it isn't only putting the information on your website, but even sometimes the content of information. I was just sharing that when I had to sign the contract for the project that we were working with the bank, the documents were so many that you cannot say you are picking them to go and read before you come and sign. It's all given to you at the spur of the moment. So we need to. And then civil society capacity also needs to be enhanced. A lot of these documents are very technical and complex. And when you have them, you cannot just start monitoring. So a lot of the monitoring, they had to engage some specialists. In Nigeria, they were lucky that the Institution of Engineers is part of the coalition. That's why you need a multi-stakeholder approach, so that professional bodies can also join and use their expertise to help in terms of whatever you do. General funding in fighting corruption with institutions such as ours and in Ghana, I mean, dependent on donor is a restriction. We need to find local ways of generating money. There are issues with even relying on government for funding. You compromise your position. But we know that out there in the developed world, CSOs get some funding from institutions. It's something that we really need to think about. One of the issues is also politicization of corruption. As soon as you talk on air, people will find out what is your background. Which party do you belong? What are you saying? So sometimes in 4 years, you are with one party. In the next 4 years, you are with another party. So it's also an issue. And for us, it's about the content. That's why we said evidence-based advocacy. Do your research, have your evidence before you go out there to advocate. And then weak political will to fight corruption. CSOs will have their part to play, but at the end of it, the buck stops with those who have been given the power to govern the country. And sometimes when we also talk about weak, the political will or leadership, for us, we see it as leadership in all spheres, because we agree that the president or the executives will be leaders, but people also have been put in places to work, and they hold leadership position. And that's why we need to get everybody on board this. One of the challenges that is there is also scattered anti-corruption laws, and then the limited definition of our corruption. In Ghana, our criminal code says that both the giver and the receiver is corrupt. So if I receive, or if I give, who will go and I receive, who will go and report me? Because even when we go to the court of law, I'll be found wanting. It's something that we need to look at. And then I've talked about weak implementation of the law. And then the overemphasis on the public sector, I think is something that we all need to do. I think in most of our laws, we tend to hit so much focus on the public sector. Meanwhile, today there is a thin line between public and private life. You get private individuals being appointed to political positions and they hold public positions. You get the private sector serving the public sector in terms of services. So if we really want to make any headway, we need to look at all the issues. I've provided our websites that you can go and find out more information about what we are doing. Thank you very much.
Merci Madame Denise de nous avoir présenté les activités de la coalition, pardon, je m'excuse, de la coalition ghanéenne de lutte contre la corruption. Merci de nous avoir éclairé donc sur les activités. Merci donc de nous avoir éclairé sur les activités, que ce soit au niveau donc national, donc avec votre participation au plan d'action de lutte contre la corruption au Ghana et la Convention des Nations Unies sur la lutte, sur le processus de revue de la Convention des Nations Unies contre la corruption ici au Ghana. Nous avons aussi retenu le rôle primordial que peut jouer la société civile dans la dénonciation de la corruption et l'importance, bien sûr, de renforcer l'état de droit, qui permet, bien sûr, d'avoir des médias libres, forts, qui peuvent dénoncer ces irrégularités, qui permet d'avoir un débat public et qui permet, bien sûr, de voter des lois et de criminaliser la corruption en vue d'une meilleure lutte contre ce fléau-là. Avant de prendre des questions, je vais inviter M. Augustine Toé de la Commission anticorruption du Libéria pour sa présentation, avant donc de vous donner la parole et de prendre les questions des partenaires.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm Augustine Toé. I am from the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. I'm a commissioner. Thank you very much to the organizers of this workshop for the opportunity afforded Liberia to give you what indeed the LACC is doing as it comes to the fight against corruption. The idea to establish an anti-corruption commission was born in this country, Ghana, when peace negotiations were going on to end our long-standing civil war. Every intervention that have been made in our political life, starting with the coup of 1980, was justified by the coup leaders that they were overthrowing a constituted government because of rampant corruption. So that was the basis of the coup in 1980. When Mr. Taylor started a war in 1989, he used rampant corruption again as reason for staging a bloody war that resulted into the death of 250,000 of our fellow compatriots. So when peace was being negotiated in this country, the idea of establishing the Anti-Corruption Commission was high on the agenda of peace negotiators. So this commission was a result of those negotiations. At the end of those negotiations, it was stated in a communique that upon resumption of governance in Liberia, an anti-corruption commission should be established to deal with the issue of corruption in Liberia. So, following the election of Mr. Salif in 2005, upon assuming office in 2006, the act establishing Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission was enacted and passed and made operational in 2008. This commission is about a little over 5 years old now. In practical terms, it's a young baby trying to walk and walk well. So the commission has 5 commissioners and the administrative staff. We are responsible. The broad mandate of that commission is to lead Liberians' fight against corruption. That's the lead organization. And three departments: administration, enforcement and prosecution, education and prevention. In doing our work, we found out that as an organization we cannot do it alone. So we partner with civil society very seriously and other integrated institutions like the General Auditing Commission, the Public Procurement Concession Commission that is responsible for all procurements of government, the LATI, and the Governance Commission. So all these institutions and civil society who are involved with corruption issues form a body known as the National Integrity Forum to share notes, to share strategies, and to work with them to give all the necessary information that we need as a commission to carry on our work. How do we get complaints? We get complaints, we have a hotline that we established, that if you have any complaint to make, you call the hotline and give us that complaint. You could walk in any of our offices and make your complaint. You can do your complaint in writing. Or sometimes government agencies that know that certain acts of corruption are taking place in those various offices refer those cases to us. But in whatsoever manner that this information is brought to us, it is kept confidential and your identity is protected. When that is done, we as a commission will look at that complaint and see whether it's something that we should look at. If we have the opportunity to investigate, now the way the act is structured, the act they established the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. And before I continue, let me submit here that when the act was being debated in Parliament in 2007, 2006, 2007, I did not have the least idea that I would have worked for this commission today. I was there in civil society, a civil society leader, as a matter of fact. I was one of those who represented civil society in an argument of that act. And I was one of those who opposed vehemently that the commission should not have direct prosecutorial powers. Today, if you ask me, my argument will change. Because I know I've come to the reality of what it is today. My argument was then, our law says that the Ministry of Justice should be the lead prosecutor of all criminal matters for the state. I did not see the reason why there should have been a parallel organization in government to prosecute. That was my argument. So, the compromise of the act is that LACC investigate, collect whatsoever pieces of evidence, and send that report, the investigative report, to the Ministry of Justice to act on it. Now, if the Ministry of Justice does not act on those reports within 90 days, then the LACC on its own can decide to go to court. What I've come to realize as a result of the provision of that act is that it creates unnecessary bottlenecks, one. Secondly, we live in a society where people are grossly dishonest. So if you have to transport pieces of evidence between one institution to another institution, the likelihood that those pieces of evidence will be tampered with is high. And that is precisely what is happening today. So that is a problem. Now I've been in the LACC 2 years now. So that what I say, if you ask me if I had an argument, if I knew what is obtaining today, I would not have put that argument forth as far back 2006, 2007. But be it as it may, I take full responsibility of my position then. So all these things have created all the bottlenecks there that we are going. But as a commission, we have put into place some preventive measures. First, there is a directive from Madam Salif that every government official who has a presidential who is a presidential appointee, should declare his or her income, assets, and liability to show that what you have coming to government, what you worth. If you have 1 million horses, you tell it to us. If you have a $1 million bank account, you say so. The form is so detailed that you will tell us what you worth, how much cash you have on your body at the time you are declaring your assets, how much cash you get in the bank at the time you are declaring your assets, and what are the other sources of income besides your salary that you are making maybe as a minister. So if you have if you're a shareholder in some companies, you tell us, hey, look, I'm a shareholder in this company, and this is my annual income that I get. I have a transport business going on. This is my income I get. It put into place. At the time that you are leaving government, if you stay in government maybe 2-3 years and you are going out, you declare to us again what you worth at the time you're going out to see whether your value have increased. And if you have increased, to what extent? And how did you get that extra money to carry your value up? Now the catch thing here in this whole asset declaration is that at least the people know that those information you were giving to us would have been verified. Now the process we own now is to verify every asset that was ever declared, to verify the asset of every declared. Some of the things we are picking up now, normally people thought we would now pick them up. Like of about 3 weeks ago, we got through with the second phase of the asset verification exercise. And strangely, 3 former government officials, 3 sitting government officials have monies in their account which sources are questionable. A former minister of internal affairs made a deposit of 50,000 United States dollars on November 12, 2012. One shot deposit, 50,000. The controller in the police force, whose salary is $750, deposited 35,000 United States dollars at one strike. The former deputy minister of public works, strangely, who is responsible to sign on all the road contracts, has an accumulated amount of a little over 400,000 US dollars in his account. And the account shows that at one point in time he deposited 70,000 US dollars at a strike. Fine. Where is the source of this money, Mr. Minister? 50,000. You did not declare 50,000 at the time you were making your declaration. As a matter of fact, you deposited this money when you were still sitting as minister. Your salary as minister is less than 3,000 United States dollars. Pole bluntly. Your salary is less than 3,000. You did not declare to us any other source of income. So how did you acquire the 50,000? Of course, let me hasten to tell you, he gave 6 different excuses for as a source of that money. Mr. Policeman, your salary was $750, although you're chief of finance for the police force. Where is the source of the $34,000 you deposited at the strike? Of course, he claimed that family money. When? Mr. Deputy Minister, where is the source of the 70,000? So, as little as this kind of thing, of course, it has been a big talk. Of course, we're trying to subject them to criminal investigation now. And if we establish reason that that money was getting there illegally, they will have to answer for it. Liberia has signed out to UNCAC, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. As a matter of fact, we are getting ready now to be peer-reviewed by the Republic of Benin and the Republic of South Africa. Just about a week ago, before I came to Ghana, we got through answering the questions, chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the checklist. So we are going to them now. We are getting ready to see what we can do. There are other legal instruments that we depend on as an institution. We have a Whistleblowing Act that we are making use of very effectively. We have the Freedom of Information Act that is helping us to do our work. We have an Administrative Code of Conduct. Now, our Constitution makes a provision that the legislature shall establish a code of conduct to govern the conduct of everybody that is serving government, be it in the legislature, be it in the judiciary, or be it in the executive branch. Unfortunately, since that Constitution came to be in 1986, there have never been a code of conduct established. So Mr. Salif, about a year ago, issued Executive Order 38 that prescribed a code of conduct for only public officials that are in the executive branch of government. I mean, it shouldn't be that way. If we talk about law, the law should be enacted or promulgated to govern every public official. So, but my understanding is that the legislators have found it very difficult to pass that law because they do not want to answer to their deeds. We have a country that some people feel that they are above the law. Anyway. Liberia has a 10-year anti-corruption strategy that we are working on. We are gone the first 5 years. It's in the process of being reviewed to see those issues that we covered, those that are outstanding, and see what we're responsible to see whether we can strategize. What are our challenges? There's a serious lack of political will on the part of some policy makers to join us in this fight against corruption. The legislature, for example, that should appropriate budget does not want to fund this commission very adequately. And my friend, there is no way you can fight corruption. You want to chase somebody who has stolen millions of dollars and do not have the resources to do what is required of you by law. And we are beginning to understand that some of the reason why policy makers do not want to adequately fund this commission is that they are afraid that if this commission is adequately capacitated, they will be chased. So it's a serious lack of political will. Secondly, if you pick up the newspapers every day in Monrovia, or you listen to radio talk shows, it's every day stories of corruption, corruption, corruption. To the extent that if you never live in Liberia, if you're a stranger, you would think that Liberia got no business to exist on planet Earth. But the irony is, people make the accusations, they do not follow them up, or even people bring complaints. Say, okay, this is complaint you have brought to us. Can you work with us to give us lead to enhance our investigation? People don't want to do it. A classic example, a newspaper reported one time that $12 million vanished in thin air in the Ministry of Finance. Wow, $12 million, that's a lot of money, eh? So we got concerned as an institution. We invited the editor, say, look, we have interest in this story. If you say $12 million of EU money disappear in thin air, then it should be a concern to all of us. Because if this story is correct, I mean, this country stands a risk of losing EU funding again. So can you work with us to give us whatsoever information you have? We can work with it to see to investigate this case. The journalist who reported the case said he's not under obligation to give us a source of it. I mean, a source. Hey, come on. You are seeing $12 million of donors' funds vanished in thin air. We have gotten interest in this case. Work for us, we are not saying, look, give us, say, don't tell us, say, the minister did or whosoever told me. But whatsoever documentation you have to substantiate what you do, or to give us the lead. But we're not going to go arrest the Minister of Finance simply because you say $12 million vanished in thin air if we do not have the concrete evidence to do so. Because allegation of corruption borders on the integrity of somebody's character. So you're not going to damage it. So if people make allegations, bring complaints, and they are not prepared to work with us to fully investigate these allegations and complaints, it makes it very, very, very difficult to move forward. Because in criminal prosecution, your evidence must be, your allegation must be proven beyond reasonable doubt. Beyond. Any iota of doubt, the defendant takes the benefit. Unlike administrative hearings that Mrs. Boson made mention about earlier this morning, that goes on the theory of the preponderance of evidence. So if you have from 1 to 10, a scale of 1 to 10, 6 take it, or 7 takes it. But it's not in criminal investigation or criminal prosecution. Criminal prosecution, you are under obligation to prove your allegation beyond reasonable doubt. So even if you are convinced that there was some crime have taken place, some stealing took place, and somebody stole money and whatsoever, you are convinced. As a lawyer, as a prosecutor, or as an anti-corruption practitioner, you might have that conviction. But if you do not have the pieces of evidence you need to bring a conviction beyond reasonable doubt, you do not move anywhere. So this is one of the challenges that we are facing. People make accusations that impugns on people's reputation. They don't want to come forth to substantiate. Let me hasten to say that our friends in civil society have been very, very, very cooperative. And there's an organization called Center for the something. Yeah, headed by my friend Thomas Doudna. He's doing extremely well. He works with us. He's involved in corruption issues and all this kind of thing. So he's doing extremely well working with them. Another challenge that we have is that we do not have sufficient laws on our books to address issue of corruption. We have been trying to get the legislature to make some amendments to this act. First, to take off the 90 days caveat on the LACC to give it primary prosecutorial power instead of going through the Ministry of Justice. Because we have gotten, we have seen the handicap it has to do. So although I was one of those who opposed it, but I'm one of the champions now to have the law amended so that LACC will have the teeth that it wants. Secondly, the issue of illicit enrichment has not been criminalized in Liberia. There are some positions you are in. A classic example we had was a policeman who was a CID director built a house, a 3-story building that cost almost $150,000 US. Clearly, we are convinced that this man's income as a policeman cannot build this house. Again, we cannot prove that he stole this money to build a house. So we can't get into court to say he stole the money. We can't charge him theft. Because if we charge him theft, we must be in a position to prove theft beyond reasonable doubt. At most we could have done, or we could have done, is to charge him with illicit enrichment, meaning using his position to get riches. Illicit enrichment has not been criminalized on our penal code, so we cannot use it. We have been trying to get the the legislature to include illicit enrichment in some of the things that we could hold people responsible, we could hold people for when it comes to corruption. So it's a difficult thing. We're making some strides, yes. We have some bottlenecks, yes. And we are working with other people. As I said, we're young, 5 years. We're trying to work and trying to work well. But the challenges, there are serious challenges to us: political will, lack of adequate laws, and lack of funding, unsubstantiated allegations that have been made by people and all this kind of thing. But by and large, we believe that we're up to the task, and time will tell. We'll try our best. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Towe, pour une présentation très complète de la Commission libérienne de lutte contre la corruption. Nous avons appris beaucoup de choses, notamment des choses positives comme la stratégie décennale de la Commission libérienne, le code de conduite qui est réservé aux fonctionnaires. On aurait surtout retenu un peu les défis auxquels fait face cette commission, notamment les défis liés au droit de poursuite dont dispose le ministère de la Justice, bien sûr les défis liés au manque de volonté politique, le manque de moyens bien sûr, et surtout l'absence de loi qui criminalise certaines infractions, notamment l'enrichissement illicite, dont vous venez de donner une illustration parfaite ici. À présent, je me tourne vers vous, pour prendre vos questions et vos commentaires. Donc, je prendrai tout d'abord 5 questions auxquelles nos invités ici répondront, et par la suite, nous continuerons dans ce même sens-là. Alors.
My name is Osman Abdulrahman. I work for NGO GDCA. I would like to say that I'm very happy with the presentations, which are very, very practical about things happening on the ground. But I think that one problem that has come all through is the issue of political will. And I think, and I'm just thinking, how do we use the bank's experience, the bank's processes, to be able to impact on the larger governance system? Because this issue of corruption is so systemic. And I think, Mrs. Bosman, you said it this morning. It is systemic. But the experience we get in the project, seem to be located, in just the project. And then we have what we call paradises in these projects. But within the larger society, it's very ordinary. And I'm talking about, every institution. There is no institution, at least in Ghana, parliament, whatever, even to the extent that the executive has to, do something to get parliament, I think it is so serious. So I'm just looking, how possible is it that we can extend the good things that are happening in the, bank finance projects to have an impact on the larger society. And I want to also commend Liberia for, starting very, very well. And I want to say that the issue of Zoomlion, I think for 12 years, Zoomlion has been with us, and we all know the way they conducted themselves in terms of, it was, they have become so powerful that, whatever they want, they just tell the government that we want this amount of money, and then all this money will be taken from source. The local authorities have no power to negotiate. And they took it outside. you know, but Liberia, you have been able to do it. And I think that I would like to commend you for being able to get it. Because I think until this investigation with the Ghana Youth Employment and what do you call it, Development Agency that has come with this report, that they were somehow implicated. At least for a very long time, I mean, they had gotten away with so many things. So even though Liberia started, you know, in a very short time, but I think that you're making a lot of progress. And so if you can share what experience, what is the secret that you are able to, you know, do this? Thank you.
My name is Mike Karipo. I work with Environmental Rights Action Friends of the Earth, Nigeria. I was just wondering, listening to the anti-corruption, our friend from Liberia, if they have a law on confiscation of property that is in place in Liberia, because I see the problem with providing proof beyond reasonable doubt. And I think one of the ways that that can be dealt with will be getting a law that places the burden on the owner of the property to explain how he got the funding for whatever it is that you find with him, or to explain how he got the money. So instead of the state carrying the burden of proving that, it should be the owner of the property that is way above his means to show how he got that property. In the UK, in the US, they have that law in there. And so you have one of the governors in Nigeria from the Niger Delta who's presently going through a confiscation hearing in the UK. And that's the law they're using, proceeds of crime law. So if you cannot explain how you got the funds that is in your possession, you forfeit it to the state. So I would think that in that circumstance, I don't know if you have it, but if you don't have it, I don't know if you have the power to make subsidiary legislations as a body, as a body. This is something you can look into to have people who have properties and monies way above their natural earning to forfeit it to government if they cannot explain clearly how they came about the money. Thank you.
Alors, je peux prendre deux autres questions et puis on donne...
Merci. Moi, c'est M. Ali du Mali, gouvernement. Donc, je remercie les deux présentateurs. Et moi, ma question s'adresse principalement à M. Toué du Libéria. Je voulais savoir, par l'exemple qu'il a donné sur les 3 fonctionnaires indélicats, là, est-ce qu'ils sont toujours à leur poste ou bien ils ont été remerciés? Ça, c'est la première question que je voulais savoir. Bon, la deuxième, c'est par rapport aux déclarations de revenus et autres. Là. Je voulais savoir, est-ce que les membres même de la commission anticorruption, est-ce que cette déclaration de revenus aussi bien avant leur entrée en fonction et puis après la fin de leur fonction, est-ce que cette déclaration de biens s'applique à ces membres-là de la commission? Et la troisième question que je voulais poser, c'est le pouvoir qu'ils ont demandé, parce que d'après les explications qu'il a demandées et il a données, c'est qu'ils ne sont pas suffisamment, comment dirais-je là, ils ont beaucoup d'entraves, donc le législateur ne les aide pas tellement dans tout ce qu'ils entreprennent. Voilà la question que je me pose, est-ce que le législateur a intérêt aussi, je veux dire, est-ce que tout n'est pas une question de mesure? Parce que on a constaté aussi sous d'autres cieux, quand on a donné trop de pouvoir à ces commissions anticorruption et autres, là aussi, il y a des abus des fois. Je ne sais pas dans quel pays, est-ce que ce n'est pas en Italie dans les années 90, tout le monde se rappelle les juges anticorruption qui ont fait trembler beaucoup l'Italie. Donc je voulais savoir, est-ce que c'est dans cet esprit-là aussi, est-ce que vraiment le législateur a intérêt à leur donner trop de pouvoir? Je vous remercie.
Donc, je prends une dernière question ici avant de permettre à nos invités de répondre.
Thank you very much. I'm Charles Okongo from Nigeria. I'm of the Cross River Rural Access and Mobility Project. I want to thank the facilitators and the presenters for what they have said. There are two questions. The first goes to the World Bank, African Development Bank. From all that we have heard, and even from the bank itself, I have not heard any plans by the bank to assist nations that have various organs fighting against corruption. I don't know whether they have such plans to at least strengthen the capacity or build capacity to enable them fight corruption. The bank fight is on its own projects, but these agencies or nations is wider spread. It covers almost every aspect of life. So I would want a situation or suggest that the bank start considering this if they have not. And then to the various countries that have presented to us, I want to congratulate you for all the efforts. But unfortunately, we end up with challenges, and you've not been able to tell us one success. I don't know whether you have ever succeeded in achieving your objective, or you are just a dog that barks and has refused to bite. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Let me start with my friend who asked whether the three officials of government are staying in their post. No, the Minister of Internal Affairs is no more at his post. The Deputy Minister for Public Works is no more at his post. I can talk to that surely. I do not know the status of the policeman, whether he stayed there or he's out. But I can tell you the Minister and the Deputy Minister have already been relieved of their posts. Of course, we have not reached a point for criminal prosecution. I think the President saw a fit to apply administrative action by dismissing them. On the issue of confiscation before people's property, it's a good argument, and that's an argument that we have been having in our country. Unfortunately, there's a provision in our Constitution that says that you cannot deprive anybody of liberty, life, or property except as an outcome of a hearing judgment consistent with due process of law. Meaning, to take somebody's property, they must have committed an offense, you must have carried them to court, afford them what is referred to as due process, at the end of it, before you can confiscate their property. So, on the basis of this constitutional provision, we just cannot do it. Because this law, it was challenged before at the Supreme Court. Some time ago, the United Nations came up with a resolution to confiscate the properties of Mr. Taylor and some associates of Mr. Taylor. The government of Liberia moved to implement that convention, that resolution. Lawyers of the affected people ran to the Supreme Court and said that that action was illegal, it was unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court upheld it, and so their properties were never confiscated. So we cannot, until we can have that portion of the Constitution amended, we just cannot move any further. On the issue of Zoom Lion, no, there's no success story of Zoom Lion in my country. Yeah, there's no success story. As a matter of fact, we are concerned as a nation, as a people, how Zoom Lion was contracted first to go take up a garbage collection contract in Liberia, when there are other Liberian companies that could have done that job. What was so extra like Zoomlion was doing, I do not know. I can't speak to that. But I sincerely oppose the idea of carrying Zoomlion to Liberia to go to garbage collection. I believe, but the World Bank again argued that the other companies that were there did not have the capacity. What was their benchmark? I do not know. I can't speak to that. But I think that was unfair to Liberians to have done so. If these people did not have the capacity, all you had to do is build their capacity or do something to capacitate them. At the end of it now, what we're seeing, we read in the paper that they are suspended, they are blacklisted Zoomlion or sanctioned Zoomlion for 2 or 3 years. For 2 years. Now, what we are concerned about is, maybe as Madam said this morning, there was an administrative hearing. Fine. But something happened that led to the blacklisting or sanctioning of Zoomlion. We as a government, we are interested. Were government officials involved in whatsoever? If there was element of bribery or fraud, then it's criminal. And so the criminal prosecution has to take its place. So as an anti-corruption commission, we are rating the World Bank office in Monrovia to tell us what actually happened. They should not just say they sanctioned Zoomlion for 2 years. What happened? Tell us the reason. If those reasons ball us on criminality, then we can move against Zoomlion, because Zoomlion don't register in Ghana but doing business in our country. So Zoomlion is subject to Liberian laws. Secondly, if Liberian officials connive with Zoomlion, either to defraud the government or whatsoever, if there is a criminal element, so we can move against the official government. So blacklisting or sanctioning Zoomlion alone for all is not enough. The World Bank needs to tell us more what exactly went on. So Zoomlion in my country, nothing to, it's not a success story here. A political will, of course, I'm admitting that the fight against corruption is very intense, is very tedious, is very expensive. If the political will is not there, first of all, to give political backing to people who are in the front line to fight corruption, give them the resources they need to work with, we will just be crying corruption, corruption, but be a mere lay service. And we're not going to move forward. Because come with me, there are people who are determined to steal and plunder state resources at all costs. And if we are serious to chase them, there must be the political will, there must be the support to do it. Thank you.
Can I just add, I think you talked about successes. In my presentation, I mentioned quite a number of successes. It looks as if in fighting corruption, we only seem to be successful when somebody has been imprisoned or we've caught a public official. But for us, we see building and strengthening institutions as key. And some of these things, it takes time for you to realize the result. But we think that, for example, the work that we are doing in the 4 countries on contract monitoring has brought to bear the need for citizens to really monitor projects that are being done in their villages and communities and bring feedback to the institutions responsible. And also, for us, one of the successes is that we need to adopt the multi-stakeholder approach, working with public institutions, the private sector, media, so that we can then strengthen what we are doing. On the whistleblower, for example, for us, we see the success is that we've really been able to bring to bear that the law needs to be reviewed. There are really challenges. It's a law that if you don't look at it, people will not blow the whistle. If there's no witness protection, if institutions are not even ready to receive the information. So that some successes have been with the private sector, for example. At least they are now on board fully, and we find that is a key in terms of the way forward. Thank you.
I'd like to add something. I think, Commissioner Toye, I think you're being a little bit too modest. The successes that, I agree with Florence, that the success is not only in actually putting somebody physically in jail. The success is being able to even question the authorities. The success is being able to move forward in your anti-corruption strategy. Those are all successes. You build on your successes little by little. With corruption, there is no way that you're going to get it all right with one fell swoop. It is an insidious system. It is done in the dark quite a lot of the time. So I think that one of the things that I would suggest that your commission does is to actually communicate those little successes, because that also encourages civil society to see that there's something that can actually be done, and that a success is not only imprisonment, but a success is also making people aware that they do have some power. Even though their power might be limited, the power of the voice is also a power, and it's also a success. So I don't think that you should, the fact that 2 people already, 2 high-level ministers, have been asked to step aside, it's a success in its own way. It is, and it will encourage other governments which don't do that, to see that actually we can also do it. Liberia has been able to do it. In Liberia, you've come from a long way, and you've been able to do it. So others can do it too.
Thank you very much. I agree with you 100%, and I agree with Florence 100% that success in the fight against corruption does not mean locking people every day. I've always said to people that the fact that Liberians are talking about corruption every day on the radio or in the newspapers means that we are making some progress. And as you said, we came from a war 15 years ago that devastated everything. We didn't even have a structure to depend on. Now we have anti-graft institutions now that are working. This Public Procurement Concession Commission that validates all government purchases and all this kind of thing, they're doing well. Now the budget was passed just a few weeks ago. If you pick up the newspapers every day now, every government procuring agency now is calling for bids. They're going through the bidding process to award contracts to buy, to do government procurement. It's not before the minister and procurement officer decide who to buy for. And nobody dare to question them. But today, you dare to do it. So we're moving forward. There is a robust General Auditing Commission that has conducted a series of audits. Now the Public Accounts Commission now in the Parliament is holding public hearings, and I mean they are being capacitated by the World Bank. They hired a secretariat for the Public Accounts Committee, and they are holding public hearing now, on these audit reports. At the end of the public hearing now, then the determination will be made as to who should be held accountable and all these kind of things. So I agree 100% that we are making effort. Of course, simultaneously we are lacking behind in prosecuting people. Of course, the Liberians want to see that. If you tell any Liberian that nobody is in jail for corruption, they say you're not working.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to the presenters. My name is Daniel Osebwachi. I'm a procurement officer based at the Ghana Field Office here, working for the African Development Bank. I would like to just contribute 1 or 2 and also attempt to answer the question that was asked about the effort of the bank in trying to also help some of the institutions on the continent in their bid to fight corruption. In the first place, I think issues were raised about how the civil society can access, for instance, bidding opening processes. In the past, unless you are a bidder that have gone to purchase a bidding document, you were not allowed to be part of the bidding processes. But as of now, with the harmonized rules, bidding opening is a public event. So anybody, if you are a journalist, you are another person who have interest in any of the procurement processes, you have every right to go to the bid opening, to listen to all the bids, do your recordings and everything, so that you can use it to also do a follow-up of the processes. So this is one of the ways that the bank has also expanded in terms of transparency, and this is well built in the harmonized rules. somebody raised a question as to, I mean, it seems all the efforts to fight corruption is being done internally within the bank. And what I would say is that, you know, the issue about political will borders on good governance. And in the past and currently, we have given grant to countries, including Ghana. At the moment, there is a program based at the Ministry of Finance. I've seen one of their reps around, so she can confirm. We are funding the Ghana Institutional Support Program. I was happy when Madam was presenting, he mentioned some institutions that are being funded under this project. The center of this program actually is capacity building. The Private Enterprise Federation is there. I was also happy when you said the parliamentary service, it is important we build their capacity. Their capacity is being built as part of this project. When we were preparing the project, the bank also thought it wise that parliamentarians will go, but the parliamentary service stays. So the major funding and capacity building issues and providing logistics is to the parliamentary service. We are also funding the internal audit agency, the Ghana Audit Service, and more specifically with regards to procurement, we are funding the Public Procurement Authority. This is all in line with building and strengthening these institutions for them to be able to do the necessary things they have to do in terms of fighting corruption and other general mandates that they have. So the bank is also making an effort in that regard. I would say that the Ghana Institutional Support Program, what we are funding now is the third phase of it. It was started some years ago, and it has also been funded in other areas on the continent. So it's not only specific to Ghana. In the course of the interaction, I think general issues were raised as to how the bank is also supporting in terms of the mining issues and the corruption, environmental issues and all that. I also want to say that we have supported the Extractive Industries Initiative since its inception. Anything that borders on transparency, that inures to the benefit of this continent, the bank is highly interested. And in addition to that, what I would say is that the key and center of the bank strategy now is green growth. So before we begin to approve any funding for any project, as part of the project preparation, we do all the necessary environmental, social impact assessment. We try to ensure that areas where these assessments are okay and it has to be approved, the project will come up with an environmental, social management plan. That is part of the project. If you don't get these things right, there is no way the bank will put funding in such projects. So these are general contributions that I would want to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. That's very, very edifying for all of us. I'm not sure whether maybe you were going to ask, you're going to go here before you.
Je pense.
Just take two, and then we go on to yours.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that is fine. Madame over there, and yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, that's fine.
My name is Tara. I'm from Liberia. My question goes to Commissioner Toh. You talk about the issue of declaring your asset when you are appointed as a government official. And you also talk about the work of the Anti-Corruption Commission in making sure that those assets declared are verified. Now, the former Minister of Information was removed before the findings of the Anti-Corruption Commission was released with respect to asset declaration. And also, we have other people that declared an asset and there was some problem with them, like the manager of the port, the MPA, and then the head of the LPRC, the Liberia Petroleum Refining Corporation. And up to now, we haven't heard anything pertaining to whether they have clarified their asset declaration or not. Yet and still, other people are being removed when they have problems with the asset declaration, and other people are still in that position. So on the part of the Commission, what are you doing to ensure that there is political will on the part of the President to make sure that those who have problems with the asset declaration are removed and investigated and being made to repay the amount? Also, I want to know, with the issue of prosecution power to the Commission, what are the steps you are taking to ensure that that power is being given to the commission so as to reduce the problem of delay when it comes to somebody not being fair with asset declaration, because he said it has to go to the Justice Ministry for prosecution, and there have been a lot of delay. So what is your own step that you are taking to ensure that these people are being prosecuted or the prosecution power is given to the commission? Thank you.
Yes, yes. All right, thank you very much. Let me, first of all, start by congratulating Commissioner Toh and Madam Florence of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. I must state that Liberia has come a long way after the war to have been able to put in place some of the structures in the fight against corruption. And I must state that the recent Mo Ibrahim Index indicated that Sierra Leone, Liberia, and a few other African countries are amongst the countries that have made significant progress in good governance, and particularly on the aspect of transparency and accountability. And I also must underscore the fact that some few years back, we've had cause to come to Ghana to look at what the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition is doing so that we can learn lessons from the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition and to help cement the kind of relationship that we have with civil society in Sierra Leone. And it has been very, very useful engaging with the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. You mentioned a number of your strengths, Madam, but I heard you say that you had problems with your criminal code. In my opinion, the problem you stated for the criminalization of the giver and the receiver, to me, is not a weakness. In fact, it is a strength, because it is stating categorically that there is zero tolerance for corruption for either the giver or the receiver. Both are culpable when it comes to the law. Let me ask this question to Commissioner Fo. You stated that your commission is undertaking asset declaration and verification. That is very impressive. We are also undertaking a similar exercise, but there are challenges with it. Would you be able to tell this House, briefly, how is your asset declaration regime structured? Is it targeting the entire public service? Or are you targeting politically exposed persons? If so, which are the categories that you are targeting? And also, please let us know, because we also are having challenges with regards the declaration regime. When and how do public servants declare their assets, and when do they stop their declaration? All right? And finally, please let us also know on your verification, how do you go about it? Do you do it at random, or do you have a set of criteria that you use in your asset verification? Thank you very much.
Last question from you.
Thank you. C'est not good. Le micro ne marche pas, mais je vais essayer. Ok. C'est bon, ça marche. Merci. Je voulais revenir sur une proposition que je voulais faire ce matin par rapport à la société civile et les projets des BAD dans les pays. Idrissa s'est occupé d'un projet où il était payé en tant que société civile par l'unité en charge de la mise en œuvre du projet. Il ne peut pas, dans ce cas, être très utile à la BAD, parce que là, il est payé par le coordinateur de projet. Donc, celui qui paie, c'est celui qui commande. Sinon, il peut retarder un paiement, il peut lui poser des problèmes par rapport à ses termes de référence, etc. Moi, ce que je voulais proposer, pour une fois, que la BAD puisse contracter avec de la société civile sur des projets particuliers parallèlement aux contrôles qui se font par les cabinets de contrôle, par les bureaux de contrôle, etc., qui, eux, sont payés pour avoir des informations, même si c'est des informations très basiques, si la société, si l'organisation, l'ONG a des pouvoirs, il peut aller demander, voir, vérifier des choses, et de visu, il y a des choses qui sautent à l'œil, qui ne sont pas signalées à temps, il peut les signaler. Je crois que la BAD gagnerait à travailler un peu directement avec la société civile en étant directement leur employeur. Maintenant, par rapport aux déclarations de patrimoine, quelqu'un disait que la corruption était insidieuse. Si, bon, chez nous, elle est attestée, mais je me demande si c'est le cas partout. Parce qu'à un moment, nous, ça ne l'était pas. Parce qu'on a parlé d'une haute autorité qui avait déclaré 2 milliards de Gouya, qu'il n'était pas censé avoir. Mais au bout quand il aurait terminé avec sa fonction, il aurait eu les 2 milliards, c'est très facile. Donc il faut que ce soit attesté. Quand on a une maison, on dit voilà le papier de la maison, titre foncier, etc. Il ne faut pas que ce soit des maisons aux États-Unis où tu débarques aujourd'hui et tu as une maison, mais que tu paies à crédit. Ça, tu le déclares au prix de la maison. À la fin de ton mandat, tu l'auras payé avec de la corruption. Personne n'y verra que du feu. Donc, avec les déclarations de patrimoine, il faut être très exigeant pour que ça se fasse de façon à ce que ça puisse servir réellement à quelque chose. Je vous remercie.
Donc, bien sûr, on donne la parole à nos invités pour répondre aux dernières questions qui ont été posées.
Thank you. Let me start with my friend from Sierra Leone. All appointees of government from the position of assistant minister to the cabinet minister, all commissioners or all commissions, public corporations, financial controllers, procurement officers are made to declare their assets. Now, we got more than a little over 1,000 public officials that are declared their assets. And asset declaration is done after every 2 years. So in 2013, if you are appointed today, you declare your asset 2013. If you stay on that job 2 years from now, 14, 15, you will declare you will be asked to declare your asset or to update your asset. If you acquired more asset or whatsoever, you got to update it. Or if your savings have increased, you got to stay so. As to verifying those assets, you know it will take a very long time to verify more than 1,000 declarants. So we as a commission sat down and determined how do we go about verifying the assets. We put the people in 2 categories. Those who manage high spending entities, we decide to verify their assets. Or those who collect government revenue. So that was the 2 criteria we used first. And those are the kind of people we are going through. After that, then we come to the other people. So it's randomly done. So I hope I have satisfied your question. My sister from Liberia, apparently you made mention about one former Minister of Information. If you are alluding to Dr. Lawrence Bropler, I would think that you have your facts wrong, because Bropler was dismissed before the whole asset declaration regime was introduced. Come in? Oh, but I made mention about Blambo Nelson. Yes, but you don't know what went in the background. The report was already complete before, Blamo got up before the report came up. But the report was submitted to the president before we put it out. So the president already had the report. Okay. If you're talking about the managing director of FPRC, we did not say anything was wrong with asset declaration. We called him to come and verify his asset, and he did not turn out to the process. We have told the president who appointed him. We are not the appointing authority, so we cannot dismiss him or neither punish him. The madam who appointed him who made him to declare asset, and because he failed to come and verify the asset, we told him, Madam, so whatsoever is a prerogative, I'm not here to question it.
I said, what are you doing to ensure that the political will on the Madam is being manifested?
Me as an individual, the commission, you in civil society, you muster the political will. You should make the government have the political will. That is what you're supposed to do in civil society. That is what you're supposed to do instead of asking me. You're supposed to engage the government now to force the government to compliance. So if you do, I mean, all of us got to work together now for the government to have the political will. So don't ask me as an individual. all of us got to work together to get the political will.
What we're all trying to say here is that we all have a responsibility. Every single one of us in our different stakeholder positions, every single one of us has got first of all, the responsibility and a role to play. I suppose the Commission, Commissioner Toye, what you are trying to underline is that you will do your bit, but civil society must also do their bit. Somebody over here also said, the bank, please do your bit, you know. So, as I said before, this is a system, you know, and the only way that you can actually combat it and get somewhere is if we put all our forces together. I think that's why I think I do admire the way the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition has organized themselves. Obviously, it's a medley of different stakeholders that have put themselves together, but with one objective in mind, and that is to keep the government accountable, and that is to also together fight the different aspects of corruption. I believe I've taken over your functions, Mehdi, but if there's no other reaction or comment, we shall go straight ahead with a short presentation on the fraud indicators and red flags. And that will also give you, I think, some more questions to ask about procurement issues and even about how to do certain things when you are looking for signs of corruption or fraud in projects. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much, Florence. This has been very, as you can see, I mean, you know, very, very engaging. We shall continue the dialogue. We shall continue the discussion. Mehdi, it's over to you now.
D'accord, merci. Je pense que nous avons répondu favorablement à la demande des participants pour consacrer une large part du temps qui nous est alloué aujourd'hui au débat et aux questions. Et puisqu'il nous reste un peu de temps cette fin de journée, on va donc vous initier un peu aux signaux d'alerte qui peuvent éventuellement exister dans les passations de marché. Donc l'objectif de cette présentation, comme je viens d'indiquer, c'est de vous donner un aperçu sur les indicateurs de fraude. En fait, les indicateurs, je dirais, d'infraction, que ce soit fraude, corruption ou collusion. Donc ce serait plutôt les indications d'infraction qui peuvent exister. Et de vous faire part également du travail que nous effectuons tous les jours au département de l'intégrité et de la lutte contre la corruption. Donc, nous évoquerons certains principes de base. Ah, je suis allé un peu trop vite. Nous évoquerons certains principes de base qui régissent le travail à la banque, et ainsi que, bien sûr, qui régissent également notre travail à nous. Nous vous donnerons un aperçu sur le pourquoi de l'utilisation de ces signaux d'alerte. Et bien sûr, nous allons agrémenter cette présentation d'exemples et de cas tirés, bien sûr, du travail quotidien que nous effectuons. Alors, comme cela a été rappelé ce matin, n'oublions pas que les fonds appartiennent au pays, que le projet appartient au pays, et donc que tous les paiements qui sont décaissés lors de l'exécution du projet, finalement, appartiennent au pays. Ils sont faits pour le pays, ils sont faits en behalf, ils sont faits pour le pays. Donc, Cela pour vous dire que le projet, il y a le principe bien sûr d'appropriation du projet sur lequel nous insistons pendant l'exécution du projet. Donc les statuts de l'ABAD spécifient clairement que, tel qu'il est stipulé dans l'article 17.1, que le produit d'un prêt quelconque consenti ou garanti par elle est employé exclusivement aux fins auxquelles le dit prêt a été accordé en donnant aux considérations d'économie et de rendement l'importance qui leur est due. Donc cela illustre bien le fait que l'ABAD certes finance le projet, mais l'emprunteur en est le propriétaire bien sûr. Donc les 4 considérations de base qui font de notre travail, il y a bien sûr le souci d'économie et d'efficacité dont nous avons parlé plus tôt. Bien sûr, il y a le principe universel selon lequel la même information doit être disponible à tous les prestataires. Troisièmement, nous encourageons bien sûr le développement économique et social dans tous les pays régionaux et ainsi que dans tous les secteurs que nous finançons, que ce soit l'éducation, la santé, les infrastructures, l'eau potable et l'assainissement. Et bien sûr, une importance capitale est accordée au principe d'équité et de transparence dans l'octroi des marchés. Alors, l'historique d'IACD vous a été présenté ce matin. La création, les différents cadres et bien sûr accords qui ont été conclus avec les autres banques multilatérales de développement. Notamment, nous avons parlé ce matin du cadre uniforme de lutte contre la corruption qui régit notre travail, qui bien sûr donne les grandes lignes, comment les investigations sont effectuées, quels sont les droits de l'accusé, quelles sont les définitions de toutes les infractions sur lesquelles nous enquêtons, ainsi, etc. Et bien sûr, Mme Ousmane a évoqué l'accord d'exclusion mutuelle et vous a expliqué cela en détail. Donc cela fait partie vraiment de notre stratégie de lutte contre la corruption qui se fait en harmonie aussi en concertation avec les autres banques multilatérales de développement. Donc je ne vais pas m'attarder sur cela puisque cela vous a été présenté ce matin. Voilà. Alors la question la plus simple à se poser est la suivante. Pourquoi IACD recourt-il aux signaux d'alerte? Tout simplement parce qu'il y a des milliards de dollars en jeu. Voilà la vraie raison. Et un projet, quelles que soient ses composantes, quelles que soient ses activités, se résume finalement aux acquisitions qui font partie de ce projet-là. Un projet se résume à des contrats. Que ce soit des contrats de travaux, que ce soit des contrats que ce soit des études, de la supervision de travaux, l'audit. Je veux dire, un projet se résume finalement à son plan d'acquisition qui est justement un résumé de toutes les activités qui vont avoir lieu durant sa vie. Et bien sûr, pourquoi nous avons IACD? Parce que nous avons le devoir de veiller à ce que les règles et procédures de passation des marchés sont respectées. Alors, afin d'arriver à cela, afin d'atteindre nos objectifs, nous devons développer nos propres moyens de détection, de sorte à être autonomes et dissuasifs dans notre travail. Alors, pour être autonome et dissuasif dans notre travail, il faut avoir une bonne compréhension des processus, une bonne compréhension des procédures également, et identifier les problèmes les plus classiques qui surviennent à chaque étape du processus d'acquisition. Donc, on ne peut pas enquêter sur quelque chose que nous ne maîtrisons pas. On ne peut pas enquêter sur quelque chose que nous ne connaissons pas. Donc, cela passe par une bonne compréhension des processus, une bonne compréhension des procédures, et partant de cela, on peut effectivement identifier les problèmes de contrôle interne qui peuvent survenir, et également les infractions qui peuvent avoir lieu à chaque étape de ce processus-là. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'un signal d'alerte? Un signal d'alerte, c'est finalement une étincelle qui vous réveille, une étincelle qui vous donne une indication. Donc, les signaux d'alerte sont un outil important qui donne aux enquêteurs les moyens de détecter la fraude à un stade précoce. Et donc, une bonne maîtrise de ces signaux-là d'alerte est essentielle. Pourquoi? Parce que ces signaux varient d'une étape à l'autre lors du processus de passation de marché. Les red flags sont différents d'une étape à l'autre. Alors, vous avez ici brièvement les phases, les phases du processus de passation des marchés. Cela a été décrit très bien et avec beaucoup de détails par M. Ayemba ce matin. Je m'attarderai seulement sur certains signaux qui peuvent exister à chaque étape. Vous avez bien sûr la préparation, lorsqu'on détermine les besoins, lorsqu'on prépare les documents d'appel d'offres. Moi, je dirais même que bien avant cela, lorsqu'un projet est évalué, on peut d'ores et déjà, à ce niveau-là, donner une certaine direction à ce qu'on veut faire. C'est-à-dire, lorsque le projet est évalué, il y a un plan d'acquisition qui est élaboré. Ce plan d'acquisition décrit toutes les prestations, que ce soit les biens, les travaux, les services, les montants, le mode d'acquisition et la durée que va prendre la passation de marché et l'exécution de ce contrôle. Donc, dès ce stade-là, au moment même de l'élaboration du rapport d'évaluation, on peut faire en sorte que certains, par exemple, certains marchés soient attribués par appel d'offres national plutôt qu'appel d'offres international, des choses soient attribuées par exemple par une consultation restreinte, un appel de fournisseur, un appel d'offres restreint. Donc on peut d'ores et déjà, vu la prestation et vu le montant qui est en jeu, avoir un mode d'acquisition qui sied donc à ceux qui sont en train de préparer le projet, notamment bien sûr le task manager éventuel qui va s'occuper du projet, et bien sûr les autorités dans les pays qui vont être en charge de l'exécuter. Maintenant, il y a bien sûr au niveau de la soumission, donc une proposition financière ainsi qu'une proposition technique sont soumises pour évaluation. Et donc à ce moment-là, bien sûr, certaines irrégularités, certaines infractions peuvent survenir, surtout lorsque le comité se réunit pendant 4 ou 5 jours afin d'évaluer les offres et sont mises sous scellé, par exemple le directeur des marchés publics. Pendant ce temps-là, des pages peuvent être substituées, le bordereau des prix unitaires peut être modifié, ainsi de suite. Donc il existe des risques à ce stade-là, puisque, bon, bien sûr, nous faisons confiance aux autorités, mais malheureusement, personne n'est parfait et donc certaines infractions peuvent survenir à ce stade-là. Je vous donnerai des exemples par la suite. Maintenant, lors de l'exécution du contrat, là aussi, des choses peuvent subvenir. Il peut y avoir, par exemple, livraison de matériel de moindre qualité. Il peut y avoir, par exemple, collusion entre l'entreprise de travaux et le bureau qui est en charge de la supervision. Il peut y avoir effectivement une substitution de matériel. Je ne sais pas si... je voulais évoquer par exemple un projet de forage dans lequel des pompes ont été substituées. Donc on s'est substitué une pompe très performante, disons à $3 000 pour une pompe moins performante à $600. Alors vous imaginez un peu les économies qui peuvent être faites si vous avez 350 forages, multipliés par $2 400 d'économie, vous voyez un peu ce qu'on peut économiser comme argent dans ce cas-là. Donc il y a toute une panoplie d'infractions, de possibilités, je dirais, de possibilités qui existent lors de l'exécution du contrat. Alors, excusez-moi. Maintenant, je parlais justement de la collusion. La collusion représente malheureusement l'infraction la plus fréquente et malheureusement celle qui est le plus difficile à prouver. Je dirais que les dénonciations, bien sûr, sont fréquentes lors de la procédure d'évaluation, car les informations filtrent plus facilement. Malgré cela, il reste quand même très difficile d'établir la collusion, parce qu'à ce moment-là, il faut prouver l'intention des gens, et ça, c'est extrêmement difficile. C'est l'une des infractions les plus difficiles à établir. Alors, à présent, nous allons passer en revue quelques signaux d'alerte qui sont fréquents lors des passations de marché. J'espère pouvoir trouver des exemples pour vous illustrer cela. Alors, bien sûr, excusez-moi juste une seconde. Ok, je vais faire ça manuellement. Ça ne marche pas non plus. On va patienter quelques secondes parce que... je pense qu'il y a un petit blocage au niveau de la machine, mais je pense que dans quelques secondes, ça peut se... I think it froze. Hein? Oui, mais ça ne donne rien. C'est complètement bloqué, ce truc. Ah. À l'après-midi, il y a peu de...